Welcome to the video on installing pfSense in Proxmox. Alright, so the next VM that we want to upload is pfSense, and this will be the last VM that we'll upload on this part of the advanced lab. But remember, it is an advanced lab. You can add more virtual machines and more devices to your network as you desire. So right away, we just need to go back to the node PVE, and then we're going to select Create VM in the upper right. We'll keep the VM ID and we'll name this pfSense. Just keep it simple. Go to operating system. It is Linux. We want local storage, and then we'll choose the ISO. From there, we can go to system. We can keep all the defaults here. I'll go ahead and add that chemo agent. Then we'll go to disk. This one will be different. I'm just going to keep the regular 32 gigabytes of space. pfSense does not take a lot of space, so I'm not giving it the 100 gigabytes that I gave every other virtual machine. And we'll keep everything else as it is. We'll go to CPU. I will bump this up to 2 core. Actually, for the install, I'm going to bump it up to 4 core. But after it's installed, I'll bump it back down to 2 core. And the same with memory. I'm going to increase this to about 6 gigabytes. So we bump this up to 6,144 megabytes, which is 6 gigabytes. And then we'll go to network. At this point, we're going to keep everything the same. We will turn off the firewall. Now we'll add other adapters in just a second. So we'll go ahead and click next. And then we can click finish. Now before we start it though, we do need to add 3 more adapters, because remember, we're using pfSense as our router in our network, and we want 3 separate subnets or VLANs within our network. And then of course we have the WAN, the wide area network, that goes out to the internet. So in total we need 4 network adapters on pfSense. So to add adapters, just highlight pfSense, come to hardware, and we're just going to select, you see we have 1 network adapter already. We're just going to add 3 more. And for now, we're just taking we want to deselect firewall, and we'll just keep the defaults for now. So there's 1. Here's number 2. And then the 3rd one. And we'll select add. So now you see we have 4 adapters total. We added 3. Now we're ready to go ahead and start it. So you can either right click and start there, or you can hit the start button over on the right side. And once that's started, what we can do is view it in the console. We'll select the no VNC, and this should look familiar. This will be the installation of pfSense. All right, so we'll go ahead and take that first window. We're just going to select accept, and we're going to go with mostly the defaults here, so it's not complicated. We'll go ahead and select OK to install. And we'll select OK again. From here, what we want for our WAN interface is that very first one, so we can select OK. And we're going to go ahead and select continue at this point. and select continue again. And now we're going to install the CE, which stands for Community Edition. So the reason it was checking that network connection to the Netgate servers is the way pfSense installs itself is it is going to download the packages and then it's going to then install those packages. But of course it has to unzip those packages before it installs the package. That's why I bumped the memory up to 6 gigabytes. If you have the extra gigabytes, 8 might be even better. But we'll go ahead and select Install CE. We'll go ahead and continue. Again, we'll just select OK and OK again. And this is what it's saying is the last chance. You want to destroy the contents on this disk, and of course we do, so we'll select yes. And now it's picking which version to install. As I mentioned before, this is February 2026, and the current stable version is 2.8.1, so we'll select OK. Now as it starts to install these packages, it's going to take a little bit of time, and occasionally it will look like it's getting hung up, but it's not getting hung up. I mean, don't be confused by when it says the processor will require, in this case, 46 more megabytes of space and 17 megabytes to be downloaded, and then it's sort of paused. Give it some time. It can take 15, 20 minutes sometimes to install the entire thing, but you can see now it's starting to install again. This time it's going to download another 103 megabytes, so it may take a little bit longer. And all this is dependent on a couple different factors. First of all, your internet speed, because it is downloading those packages. Second, the amount of memory that you gave it, because it downloads those packages into the cache. And while those packages are in the cache, that's where it'll be unarchived or unzipped. And then it will verify that those are the legitimate packages, and then it will install those packages. And all that takes place in the cache, which is the memory. And then, of course, the third factor in how long this installation will take place is how many CPUs did you give it, because it's just more processing power. I went with this pretty generic, just 2 CPUs and 6 gigabytes of RAM, and I have a pretty fast internet connection, so we'll see how long it takes to do this install. A lot of people will run into problems at this point, and it's usually because they had a lack of memory. Now we see we got through this point here, but there's still going to be a couple more times where it needs to download more. But as I was saying, the problems that most students run into is they don't give it enough memory, and that cache space that I was talking about, there's just too much going on there, and either the system gets hung or it just stops the installation. And you'll see there's several points. It looks like you're making progress, and then it will stop and pause for up to a minute or two before it starts progressing again. So just be patient on this install. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll start it back anytime there's any interaction that's required. Okay, it took about 5 minutes for that install to take place, so now we're ready to hit OK, and then we will reboot. Now, once it reboots, we'll finish the configuration from the command line, and what we're going to do is configure those adapters. So those 3 adapters that we added, we are going to use those as DHCP servers to serve up and lease those IP addresses that we set up for each of those LANs. And the first time it reboots, it's going to take a little bit longer than it will normally. Okay, so we're done. So the first thing we want to do is assign interfaces. So we select option number 1, assign interfaces. And you'll see what we're going to do. We're not going to do anything with the WAN, and the WAN already has its IP address of 192.168.0.21. And of course, these are all going to be /24 CIDR notation. So once again, we want to assign those other interfaces. So we'll select the option number 1. And the first thing it asks us is, do we want to set up VLANs? We do not want to do that first. We'll do that individually with each adapter. So go ahead and select no. Now it wants to enter the name that we want to name the WAN. So I'm just going to do it in order. So starting at VTnet 0 all the way through VTnet 3. So for the WAN, we will just name that VTnet 0. And it's asking us now, what are we going to name the LAN? This will be the second one, VTnet 1. And then the optional one, or OPT, we're going to call VTnet 2. And then optional 3 will, of course, be VTnet 3. So here's our naming convention. And we're good with that, so we can just go ahead and select yes to proceed. And this should take us back to the main menu. And what we can do at that point is we can assign IP addresses to those adapters. All right, so we're back to the main menu. So now we're going to go with option 2, which is the set interface IP addresses. So those adapters are also known as interfaces. So we'll select number 2. And it tells us the available interfaces here, and there's a number by each one. So which one do we want to configure? As I mentioned before, we're not going to do any more configuration with the WAN. So the first one we want to do is the one is VTnet 1 or the LAN. Let's go with option number 2 for that one. So it's going to ask us if we want to configure the IP address used for the LAN interface by way of DHCP. We do not want to, because we want to manually assign the IP range. So I'm going to select no. And now it wants to know the IP address for this adapter. So I'm going to use 10.0.1.1. This will be the name of the adapter. And this adapter will be the adapter for our eCore subnet. So all the IP address in that 10.0.1.0/24 IP range will be our eCore. So now it's asking us the subnet bit count. That is that /24, the CIDR notation we've been talking about before. So we'll just type in 24. Now we can just hit enter. We don't need to put anything in this prompt. We do not want to set up the IPv6. We can hit enter for none. Now we do want to enable the DHCP server, so we'll select Y. And now it's asking us what IP range, where do we want this IP range to start? And these are the IP addresses that this interface will assign to devices that are connected to this interface, basically the eCore LAN. So we're going with 10.0.1. I'm going to start the range at 11. Now, the reason I'm doing that is these will be the IP addresses that will be available to be leased. I'm saving 10.0.1.2 to 10 for static IP addresses, things like servers, and that you don't want IP address changing. So that's why I'm selecting 10.0.1.11. Now it's asking the end IP address. So I'm going with 10.0.1.250, and that would leave a couple more IP addresses for static in case we use 2 through 10. I can go ahead and use 1 through, or 251 to 254, because 255 is always the broadcast IP address. So we never assign that one. So I'll go ahead and select enter. Now it's asking us if we want to revert HTTP as a web configurator protocol, and we will select no on that one. All right, so it's assigned the adapter that IP of 10.0.1.1, and it's asking us to hit enter to continue. It brings us back to the menu. We still have 2 more interfaces to set up, and this will go quicker because I won't explain all the settings. So once again, we go to number 2, which is set interface IP address. And we want to set OPT or optional one. And so we'll put the number 3. We do not want the IP addresses to be set up for that interface by DHCP, so we'll select no. And now we'll select the IP. So the second one is going to be our all-safe LAN. So I'm going with IP address 10.0.2.1. And this will be a /24. And then we just select enter. We do not want IPv6. And we do, yes, we want to enable the DHCP server on this adapter. And we're going to use basically the same range. The only difference is that third octet for the all-safe LAN is going to be a .2. So we want to go from 10.0.2.11 all the way to 10.0.2.250. Do not want the web configurator. We see that we have assigned the IP address to that OPT1 adapter, so we can select enter. Now we have one more interface to set up, so we'll go ahead and select option 2 again. And this will be select option 4, which is OPT2. We do not want to set up the LAN IP with DHCP. And the new IP address will be 10.0.3.1. Select enter. That is a /24. And then we just hit enter here because there's no input. We do not want IPv6. And we can select enter again with no input. Do we want to enable the DHCP server on OPT2? Of course we do, so we'll select yes. And we're using that same range again from 11 to 250, 10.0.3.250. We do not want to set up the web configurator protocol. And now we have that set up. We see HTTPS 10.0.3.1. That is the last adapter that we needed to set up. So this is where we're going to stop for now. So just to review real quick, your WAN IP address, this will be different for you almost certainly. And this IP address is actually, you're getting that from your home router, because remember the WAN adapter or interface is going out to the internet, and we are bridging from our Proxmox server to your home network. So it's getting its IP address from your home router. So that IP address will be in whatever range that your home network is. Then we can go down to the next three adapters. Those should be the same, because those are the ones that we just statically assigned, and we set up the DHCP servers on those. So that completes what we're going to do right now, and we'll finish the configuration through the GUI from one of our virtual machines. But in the next video, what we're going to do is install Spice, and this will really be something that will enhance your user experience when you're dealing with the individual virtual machines. It will allow things like copy and paste and all those functions that the VirtualBox Guest Edition tools did. Spice will allow you to do the same thing, so we won't be using a no VNC to interact with our virtual machines. We will be using Spice, but that is in the next video, so I will see you there.